All right, hello everyone. Welcome to another design review for incremental language design for Wolfram language post version 13. All right, the first topic here is the limiting of echo.
Right, so this is something we have discussed several times, and there are a few possibilities.
Well, certainly nothing is going to be a string option.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I tend to think, I guess Christopher is not in this meeting, but I tend to think that, an outer wrapper to a big, first of all, so quiet echo quiets echoes, right?
Correct.
I wonder if quiet echo should take an argument that determines, how quickly it quiets it, so to speak. Because I can see that, yeah, I wonder if it should have a second argument.
I see. It's like our output limiter. Sorry, the message limiter that limits to 3. So here we put a number.
Yes, that's what I'm suggesting.
Yeah, I like that.
And with an individual echo, what option could we reuse? We must have had a max repeats. We've had max iterations. We've had max whatever. What else do we have that's in that family of how many times can you repeat this?
Let's see, max items, max. Max iteration. No. I
don't quite have it, do we?
No, I don't think so.
Well,
perhaps we don't need it. Actually, I think with your idea of the quiet echo, that could be enough.
Yeah, I mean, there's also the limit versions of recursion limit, output size limit, but it's maybe a little different of an application. Echo limit or.
Yeah, well, I mean, but that's a question of, it's funny. I mean, a third of a century ago, we introduced that, 3 messages and it switches off type thing. And that mechanism seems to have worked quite well over the years. I'm just thinking do we need fine-grained control inside each echo? So quiet echo of blah, 3 would say, make any individual echo only echo up to 3 times, right? And the default of quiet echo would be 0, right? In other words, don't let it echo at all, right?
Right. Yes. So
what do you mean by a particular echo?
An echo in the code, I suppose. What do I mean by a particular echo? Good question.
So if expr has 4 echoes in it, it could echo n times 4.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Yes. Is that implementable? I mean, there are dynamically buildable echoes which wouldn't be caught this way.
Right. I think the simple thing would be just the maximum number of echoes from, the maximum number of times any echo anywhere in the code could print.
Yeah, I know, but I think that's very confusing. I think that's going to lead to people having bugs. I agree that would be another possibility, is the total echoes that can happen in this output.
What if you just give an integer, it's a global thing, but you can use tags or labels or whatever we call them in echo, and you could give like tag 1 goes to 3.
Oh God, no.
But then you could also just do like, all goes to 3.
No, but you could go in. I think you want to go into the individual echoes. I mean, we're going to assume the code is right there. That's the normal case. I do tend to agree that this would be the right thing for the total number of echoes.
Right.
But when echo is signing off, it should produce some message at the end that says echo is now being quieted. Do you understand what I'm saying?
No, I don't.
Like with messages when you have to do the
Yes.
third, where
Yes.
it says
Oh, I see. Yes, yes.
the rest are suppressed.
Mhm.
Should be a message or an echo.
It should be an echo, I assume. We have to design that echo. Okay, so let's go through this. So then, number of prints allowed from echo functions. Okay, this is Ian was suggesting then the same thing for quiet echo, as opposed to this echo limiter, right?
Yep.
Hello, yeah. Okay, so we've got three things proposed. We've got quiet echo with a global argument. We've got quiet echo referring to each individual. Let's see. You know, what we could do, let's imagine that we introduce a max repeats option to echo, okay? Then we could still do, presumably, we could have a max repeats option inside quiet echo, where quiet echo normally just says how many total to do, but we can also say, I don't know what the precedence of this is, max repeats to 3, okay, which means allow up to 3, allow only up to 3 of each one, and a total of 20. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yep.
Now, the only awkwardness is that quiet echo would then have to have an infinity. You know, this case, the case where you just want to limit everything by 3, right, would be this case here. Right? You understand?
That's not that weird.
No, it's just an annoying thing to have to type in. Look, max repeats will do nothing if that second argument is not present. So we could probably have that default would be, I think that's what we should plan on, right? A maximum number there, I mean, it's a little bit of a shame. With messages, we don't have this mechanism yet, right? When you issue a message, you know, you have an echo here, but if I issue a message with the message function, right, we could in principle have a max repeats option there. Am I making sense?
There's no current way to change that 3 number of how many times the message is issued. Is there?
Are you telling me, or I don't?
I don't know. That's a question.
I don't think there is one. No, I think you can switch off. Yeah, I mean, I think this is something that was introduced, you know, 34 years ago, and basically has worked fine, hasn't been changed. Okay. And this is the only way out of it, is this. Okay.
Mhm.
Now, I mean, I want to say, and I think Ethan on our live stream is commenting on the same kind of thing. The idea that we have long discussed of having messages which are off by default in the code is something that, as we talk about, you know, this new effort for bug fixing and so on, and we're redoing a bunch of the code, you know, that's something we should look at again. I mean, people understand that idea, right?
Yes. And I think we do have already some messages that are off by default.
Yeah, like the packing messages.
Yes.
Mhm.
But I mean, the main issue is it is a, it's a, in fact, can we make sure that it's on the Sushma's global project list, this adding messages that are off by default? Could somebody make sure of that, Addison?
Yep, I can do that.
Because I
Problem
think
is you want to be able to turn them on like by domain, not
that's
just
correct.
globally.
That's correct. And so what that means is it's a whole taxonomy of messages, basically. And there was an effort to do that at some point in the past, and it was really a flop. And I think we need a better thinking through of how we do a taxonomy of messages. That is, there's sort of concept tagging of messages, so to speak.
Right. I mean, a common idiom now is that within a context, you have like a $debug that you can turn on or off, or it's set to a level that controls it. But yeah, it'd be better to have a common tool for it everywhere.
Sorry, what were you saying was a case?
It's common that you'll have something like cloud object backtick debug level or $debug level or something.
Oh, that's horrifying.
Right.
Yeah.
So which does that exact same thing within the packlet of cloud object. But it's for developers. It'd be good to have one for
Right. I mean, we need a okay. So by the way, Nick is saying on the topic of quiet, can we have a way to turn off quieting of confirm quiet? Oh my gosh, what is that for? I mean, confirm quiet. I don't know how does it quieten? You mean turning off the messages which are being confirm quieted? Is that what we mean? No, I don't understand what that term
means. Doing the behavior of confirm quiet, but issuing the message. So it throws the failure to the enclose, but it also issues the message.
Does this not have a way of issuing the message? That's a question for Christopher. I don't know. We could see if Christopher is findable. We can ask him.
I can try.
Okay.
You could get the held message from the failure and issue that.
No, but it just wants to be an option to confirm quiet, presumably, that says don't suppress the message.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure we discussed that, and for some reason we decided not to do that. Okay, so I'm just coming back to this. So what we're deciding is quiet echo should have this ability to allow through a certain number, and a max repeats, and the max repeats option should be able to go into echo itself. Right? Does that make sense?
Yep. So what do you prefer to be an option and not another argument or a pair of numbers, like in capital N or something like that?
Because echo needs an option. Echo doesn't have any way to do it without an option, does it? Or there are enough optional arguments to echo. We couldn't do it without an option.
I see.
Well, I see a way to support max repeats and quiet echo, but I don't know how you would implement that for the echo functions themselves.
Perhaps a tagging mechanism, like Bob was saying before, a bit like catch and throw. So echo has a tag, and from outside we say for this tagging allow 10.
Probably that's right. That's an implementation issue. Let's not get into that. Let's assume that's doable. It seems like it has to be. I mean, in worst case, something knows that an echo was issued, and it could be suppressed at the level of the actual output. Okay.
Okay, we'll think about that.
Okay. Echo temporary. That will be a nice thing. Wow. But the problem is, how would we do that given that we've got so many different echo functions? I agree. Echo temporary will be very nice. What's the right way to do it? I mean, we understand the idea. The idea is this is a temporary, a print temporary cell, right?
Right.
I mean, the other possibility would be to have a wrapper that says make all echoes in here be temporary.
Yeah, I was thinking about an analog to like monitor, which is a similar sort of construct that uses print temporary but has a single target cell.
Right. But so instead of quiet echo, we could say temporary echo effectively.
And then all echoes would go to the same cell ID, basically.
Oh, if there are 5 echoes in there, do they replace each other or do they pile
No.
up?
No, they pile up
And then they all disappear at the end.
Okay.
and then they disappear at the end. I think that's an interesting global construct, and it might be more useful than having them having an individual echo temporary. Because if you have an individual echo temporary, I mean, arguably,
We should do
both
the
are
same thing with
useful.
prints, right? If we're doing this for echoes, we should do it for prints also.
I think people shouldn't use print.
Well, that's not for you to decide.
Well,
So
these-
cell print. Like I don't think there's a cell print temporary. No.
Cell print temporary will be okay. So wait a minute. So print
There's a
temporary.
print temporary, but there is no cell print temporary.
There probably should be. Okay, but this idea is, I mean, this is kind of an interesting idea because it could be done partially in parts of the code, right? So if you have this wrapper, you have one piece of code, it accumulates a bunch of printout, and then shunk, it disappears. Very similar to how our progress monitoring system works. Am I making sense? Do you
Yep.
understand what I'm saying? Yes. Does anybody know who here is involved with the progress monitoring system? Because that's going to be similar to this, and we want it to work the same way.
I think that's Italian, Julio.
Okay. So we probably should have a review of that. We should have an idea of how we're going to do this. And then we should have a review of that to make sure it's consistent. Does that make sense?
I got that.
Okay. I don't know what the right names for these are. I mean, echo temporary might be useful on its own, but we need this wrapper. Okay, so quiet echo. And by the way, notice that with quiet echo as a wrapper, it means that in a section of the code, you can say up to this number in this section of the code and up to some number in another section of the code.
Right.
Okay, well, anyway, okay, nobody's saying anything here, so we're going to move on. I mean, we need a wrapper like this. What should it be called?
What do you think of echo monitored and the proposals for other ways that you might want to monitor the echoes? Like we talked about replacing
Oh, I
each
see.
echo, but also letting them pile up,
That's an idea. Yeah, okay.
first in, first out, etc.
If it's going to work on print and cell print, it could be something like temporary print block.
No, I like this idea of the replacement.
I mean, that could be done in evaluate with progress.
Evaluate with progress is the thing for the monitoring system.
Right, Julius thing, which
What's that?
yeah,
but it isn't finished yet, right?
It isn't finished, right?
Why is this? Why is that? Can we report this again? Why is that showing up on the autocomplete? Okay, Addison, please report that again.
Yep, I just screenshotted it.
Okay. So Ethan says, why not overload quiet? Let's look at quiet. I don't think it's quite going to have the right functionality, but you know, this idea of quiet echo with a number here probably should be extended to quiet. Am I making sense? And this was the idea for bank switching of messages. Am I making sense?
So that could be something I've wanted sometimes, is that in the same way that we limit to 3 each message, there could be a total limit to the number of total messages emitted.
Yeah, right. But that's exactly what we would do with this. This would be saying quiet by default is a 0 there, and with a different number would be, you know.
No, but quiet effectively has an infinity right now because it lets many messages to be printed. Oh, no, sorry.
No. Quiet prevents
Yeah,
all.
yes, that's right. It's infinity with a max repeats of like 3.
What are you talking about? That's the default for everything. But quiet, if you say quiet, it is no messages get printed.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So it's the exact same thing as quiet echo. Right? It's the exact same thing. Add an argument to quiet the same way we're talking about adding an argument to quiet echo. Now the issue is, what about what quiet has to do with messages? It does not have to do with prints. Right? I mean, you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think prints are out of the picture. I think prints are their own thing. If you're doing print, you get what you get. You know, echo is the thing that is intended to be the modern form of that you know, is for doing intermediate stuff in code. Okay. All right. So what I think we should do, I like the idea of a second argument to quiet, but I still think, okay. I like the idea of being able to do that replacement type thing. And I don't know whether that's something that should be in quiet echo, the ability to do the replacement. Do you understand what I'm saying?
No.
Right. As opposed to letting them just pile up and disappear.
Yeah. Oh, right.
Well, no, I see. Quiet echo prevents them appearing in the first place. So the next issue is appear and then disappear.
Right. Sorry, I was thinking about echo.
Right. So then that will be temporary echo.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, I think we need to discuss temporary echo. We need to discuss evaluate with progress because they're going to be very similar. So let's get that back on the agenda for that. Okay.
I got it. Yep. Christopher is here, by the way, also.
Okay. Christopher, the question was raised about confirm quiet and why confirm quiet cannot actually generate its message.
What do you mean by generates message? I mean, so just for reference, the behavior of confirm quiet just changed, I think, with 13.0, so that it has the correct behavior with interacting with quiets, which was the main thing we talked about before, which is why it was listed as experimental.
So wait a second. So what does that mean? Does that mean if you do confirm quiet, does confirm quiet here? If I do this, okay, it doesn't produce that message. It doesn't actually say 1/0.
Right. It suppresses the messages that it catches. Yes.
But why?
Because if the
What
whole
if you-
point is that you're basically handling the error, then you don't want it to print a bunch of messages anyway.
I see. But the question that's being asked is, what if you did want that message printed?
Then I think the easiest way to do it is you can
Pick
in
it
the
up in
second
the-
argument of enclose. Yeah, you can print it out again. Actually, that was another point. There was a bug. Actually, I should probably reply to this bug because I think it was also fixed in this 13 change, which is if you look inside the failure object for that confirm quiet generates, it now includes a held version of the call to message. So you just have to release hold that and it will print the message.
Okay, so if I look at this thing here, there we go, hold message call.
Right. So that also wasn't there before, which I think maybe made it so that there was a little bit of information that was missing in order to reproduce the message, but now everything should be there.
Okay. Okay, question. Why is it thought useful enough that there should be an option to confirm quiet to actually generate the message in real time?
Well, that's an interesting question. I mean, the first thing is that options are generally a little bit difficult for all the confirm functions because they sort of like confirm quiet, for example, can take up to, I forget, it's like 3 or 4 arguments, right? And a lot of the arguments are like, in particular, the third and fourth arguments can be any expression, right? Because one of them is the information, the other is a tag. So it's sort of options are a bit difficult. I guess in principle there could be one, but yeah, that would be my concern. And also, of course, you can't just write automatic in all those fields. Like you can put null for information, but the moment you put a tag, the behavior of confirmed quiet is different from if there's no tag. I mean, maybe we could have something like for some special tag, like, none or something like that, it will behave as though you didn't provide any tag at all. But I mean, it's the same problem with throw and catch, where if the minute you give throw a tag, it's a totally different animal.
Well, it doesn't seem like the most important issue to be able to do this. Now,
I mean, I think it's worthwhile being able to do, but the way to do it, I think, is just by handling it in the second argument of enclose. I mean, maybe there could be an easier, an easier function for doing that, but I don't know exactly what it would look like. Maybe this is a little off topic for this meeting, but there was another thing which I actually added to enclose, but which is not documented yet, partly because it doesn't have a good enough name. And that is basically, there are certain, so the second argument of enclose in general is a function which takes the failure object and processes it and does whatever it wants to do. But you can also give it a string, and it will use that string to sort of basically query a property as the third usage there. Query a property from the failure object. But so in 13, there's now also another string. I'm trying to remember exactly what it's called. It's called like propagated failure or inherited failure, something like that, which basically makes it so that, because basically you can get situations where you called confirm and the confirm wraps this other failure in another layer of failure object. And so this special string basically makes it so that it will, it just runs a function that, processes it to remove any of those outer nestings of failures. So you just get the original error, which is sort of a very common operation you want to do. So it might make sense. I mean, if that actually gets documented and stuff like that, I don't know what the right name would be for it, then it might make sense to have other kind of named processing pipelines, like, if it was a failure from a confirmed quiet, then throw the message again, if that makes sense.
Right. But what you're saying is that thing which is right now documented to merely take the failure object and subvalue into it with property, you're proposing that property be able to do something more fancy than that. Is that correct?
Yeah, basically. And I mean, there's some ways of doing that which might work by modifying failure. There's some ways of modifying failure in simple, not totally crazy ways that might mean that that enclose can still technically just, query into failure. But I think it's probably cleaner if
right, but
basically
then
close
and
this.
then in particular, you might end up with a list of stringed properties, so to speak, as the second argument of enclose. If you want to both generate the message and propagate things and blah blah blah, you could end up with a string with a list of strings there. Yes.
Well, that maybe yes. I mean, that could be useful. But the thing is, for example, the one that exists right now for propagating failures, I mean, all that does is it changes the return behavior of enclose, right? So if you imagine if you had multiple things that just change what does enclose return, then it's a little bit unclear which one you use. I mean, maybe you just use the last one in the list.
I see.
If you get what I mean.
I understand. So what it has to define that there's two possibilities. Number one, enclose can have side effects. And number two is what does it
function can
return?
have side effects.
Yeah.
Right.
And then
so I mean, maybe it's just a matter of you have a list and it will run all of them, whether they produce side effects or not or whatever, and it returns whatever is determined by the last one. Yeah.
Right, but the thing that you're saying is that you need something where it is a propagation of let's see, is some where it propagates. Let's see, what you're saying is the failure object wants to cascade upwards. So that is very similar to an old thing in the event handler, right, which has a similar kind of upward propagation issue, right? Because in an event handler, there's the question of, do you propagate?
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
I think so, yeah. But this is a little bit different because basically the issue here is not whether it propagates it. The issue is sort of a very specific question about the behavior of confirm, like the normal confirm. So basically the point is that the standard confirm, one of its main usages is for propagating existing failures. So that is, you call some function, it produces a failure, or it might produce a failure, you wrap it in confirm so that, if it produces a failure, you're going to stop everything and go to the enclose, etc. So the point is, though, is that confirm will basically wrap the failure that it gets in another level of failure, which is this confirmation fail, which has a bunch of metadata about where did it fail, what were the circumstances which it failed, etc., and stuff like that. And so the point is that by default, that confirmation failure is the thing that gets to the top level. But often that's not what you want, because all you really care about is just that inner failure that triggered the confirmation. You don't care about the actual, the little confirmation failed wrapper around it. So that's the point of it. But so there's this sort of very simple function that, that like I've written several times. And I talked to some other people who had also written this a few times. That's basically like, oh, you check, that the failure object has a certain structure and that it comes from a certain place and so on. And if those are all met, it's basically the simplest case, then you unwrap it and just produce the inner failure, if that makes sense. It's easier to show if I had an example, but.
Well, maybe we should pick this up at a different time, but
yeah, I'm not sure this is relevant for this meeting, but.
Right, but so, okay, so I think the answer here, go ahead.
I was going to point out that in relation to failure propagation, it might also be good to look at failure action, the option failure action of query, because it has to handle with a similar situation.
Right, this is about whether it stops immediately versus it continues versus, okay.
Yeah, this does seem relevant. And arguably, this should be somehow merged with the whole confirm business. Like, how on earth does this play with confirm and close?
I mean, it depends on which option you pick. I mean, like for example, if like at some level, any function that returns a failure object should play fairly nicely. So I mean, if you call this and you use, I think it's the default value for failure action where a query or data set will like return some failure object, then that will work just fine. I mean, maybe there could be some special ones that sort of, where acts a confirm function, but I'm not sure how useful that is.
Yeah. Okay. Let me, I think we should try, and we're going to run out of time here. So for another time, let's talk about this cascading failures business. Maybe we should take a quick look at this. What is this?
Okay, so you can just evaluate this code and look at the examples. It's just some thoughts after our meetings this week on arrays. So this is something I will present more carefully next week. But for example, this is an object that tries to combine lists and associations and then handle both simultaneously in the way we have been discussing without repeating keys, etc. This is
okay. And to what extent is it now this transducing kind of idea where it is basically, where it's a templating wrapping thing? Is that what this is, or is this not that?
Yes, this is a very small prototype of the idea, but just wanted to get your first feelings about it. And yes, so this will be combined eventually with more powerful functionality.
Oh, I see Bob actually mentioning here who could actually use his voice to say something, but
you were in a good conversation with Christopher. I didn't want to interrupt.
Okay. But mentioning capture echoes. I don't know what would capture mean.
It means they're not put into new cells in the notebook. They're just shown in the progress bar.
What do you mean by? Oh, I see. I see. That's an interesting option as well.
Right. Use the upcoming progress thing that we're doing as the mechanism for this replacing.
So throwing. Basically, what you're saying is.
Do you want to copy that onto the screen?
Yeah. Does it work?
No.
And is the idea that if you call it twice, the second call will replace the first one?
The second echo within expr would replace the first one.
Okay, yeah, that would be super. I mean, so basically the idea is it's just like you call this to say, this is what I'm doing right now. And then in the nice progress window, it'll have a little section that's just like, this is what I'm doing. That would be super nice.
Yes, I agree. I mean, I think this is in the category of, this whole idea of notifiers that don't, non-journaling notifiers, so to speak. Notifiers which is not something we've traditionally, notebooks are traditionally something where it stores the history. But this is an example of something where you want, a thing that is writing and overwriting, so to speak. It's a different model for what's going on. And I think a general model that just like print temporary, that there should be some mechanism where echo, print, et cetera, can target a replaceable region, which is essentially what this is, what you're saying here, right?
Right. I mean, the progress stuff that's going in at some point is already that for a whole bunch of things. It could be that for echoes too.
Right. But I mean, I had always thought that send message, which right now can do things like send you a text message, should also be able to send a message to some notifier on the screen, which would have something like this property.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So, okay.
Well, maybe one question, though, is whether or not, I mean, I would kind of think this should be its own echo star function, because, I mean, if nothing else, I mean, so one question is whether you'd ever want to have normal echoes alongside this. And it seems like you might, at least for debugging.
The problem is that we also have echo evaluate and things like this.
Right. You would double the number of functions, right?
Right. But so what we have been discussing earlier is a wrapper called temporary echo or something that is a wrapper around a block of code that causes like a print temporary, except not like a print temporary because it's an outside in rather than inside out type operation.
Alternatively, you could have an option in all the echo functions that's, temporary. I don't know. That something like temporary goes to $temporary, which by default is false.
Right. By the way,
so I mean, one of the issues though with doing it like this is, I mean, it seems like there could be scoping problems. I mean, like for example, if you're calling map and the function that you're mapping with, if it has an echo in it, I don't know. I'm not sure if you want that to be captured. But yeah.
Well, from the outside, I think you say from the outside if you want to. Look, both things are useful, saying from the inside and saying from the outside. Because you might have a thing where you've got a bunch of echoes in there, and there's a huge number of echoes in this piece of code, but you just want to see them, because then I would leave echoes in my code a lot more if it was a temporary thing, right? As opposed to just you put them in, you edit them out, which is what I do most of the time now.
But I mean, like there are some functions like, okay, for example, map, where there's the operation of map itself, and then there's the operation of the function that you're using to map with, right? So you can imagine that if I was implementing map or some map-like function, that I would implement all these sort of captured echoes where it gives all this nice information about what it's doing right now. But then if separately you put echoes in your your function that's being mapped with,
I understand what you're
it
saying.
will interfere with that. Yeah.
Then in other words, it would have an encapsulation inside there. I mean, the same thing, that's what in the case of confirm was fixed with the lexical version of confirm, right?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you can either have a lexical thing or you can have some sort of, like what's it called, the stack inhibit or whatever. I mean, neither of these are particularly pretty.
Right. Okay. For a different time. By the way, Ethan is commenting that event handler should have pinch, zoom, drag, drop, pan, etc. in event handler. That's a comment for the front end team and should be passed on to them. Addison, that's for you.
Yep, just marked it down.
Okay, very quick look at this array association. So, Jose, to what extent is it the case that this is in fact like that kind of framing system that we discussed before?
Yeah, so the data frame that has been discussed other times is very focused on columns and matrices. I want to have something that is of any depth.
Sure.
And that handles rugged cases, etc. So at the very end, you see a more interesting example. I've started with probably 2 trivial things here, and I will have a better thing for next week's arrays example. So this case, for example, at the end, we do have an array of random integers and then lots of headers. So here we see how by writing it in this case, we gain like 22 times space. And then we can easily transpose it because we are just acting on the arrays of numbers rather than the keys. The keys are stored only once.
Sure.
And so this is.
But the whole point is that when you access this from the outside, I can access it by keys, for example.
Exactly. Yes. Exactly. Yes. And keys and numbers. This combines. If one of these lists of headers is a 3 rather than a list of 3 objects, then that behaves exactly as a list. And so this object handles simultaneously lists and associations in a common way.
As its inner piece. Let me just understand. What is the basic semantics here?
Yeah, so these examples are showing that you can have any part spec, and internally it's just the data, comma, what I call headers, which is a list of either a number or a list of keys. These cases are lists. So
okay, but can they be ragged?
It will be, yes. I'm working with Rob to have his new ragged structures to be able to be handled here, and then this will work with that. So so we want to handle simultaneously these 3 axes.
Oh, I see. The thing that's super confusing to me is what I see as the output here, which is really not what I should see, probably.
Exactly. Yeah, I haven't prepared.
Okay.
But that object, because it has a list of keys, it behaves like an association.
I get it. This makes perfect sense. This is what we've discussed, and this makes perfect sense to me.
Exactly. So at the end of your screen right now, you have this mixed case in which you have 3, AB. So
yeah, I get it. Yeah, I get it. It's a list of associations.
Exactly.
Yeah, this is exactly how it should work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And this here is an association of associations with keys 1, 2, 3, right?
Exactly. Yeah. You see the normal form, and so you can access 2B.
So the length of the list and the headers is equal to the depth. Is that basically it?
Yeah.
The position is the depth. The length is the dimension.
Right. Okay.
No, the length of the sub-elements. What Christopher was asking, the length.
Right.
of
The
list of
total length
headers.
of the whole list of headers is equal to the depth of the whole expression.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know quite what happens with raggedness, but I mean, presumably it takes these things, you know, if you give a whole bunch of headers and there aren't enough elements in the raw data list, it will just take the headers it can.
Right. So it's something we have some sort of sparse representation of the ruggedness in the first argument, some efficient representation, and that it is also doing the separation of the data and the dimensions, the rugged dimensions, and so the data can still be packed, for example. So that Rob is working on that. So you will see that in one of the future array meetings.
Okay,
But
that's
that's not
exciting.
here yet.
Okay, this is basically what we had discussed previously.
Mhm.
This is nice. I mean, and then, I mean, sort of the beginnings of a more chunkable. You know, once we have this kind of framing, the inner creature of data here could suddenly start to be something that isn't even local.
Right, exactly. So whatever we put in the first argument is a separate implementation thing. So here we are discussing the object that the users will interact with proper names and proper typesetting, etc.
So by the way, what about if the elements at the bottom, if they're different types, like if one of them is a string and some of them are integers or something like that, does I guess maybe this just doesn't. So I guess the question was going to be, does the list part have some way of storing that so it's packed? But I guess that's if you use, Rob's, some compiler data structure, then you can pack it. Is that sort of the theory of it? Or like it doesn't lay it out so that existing packed arrays will be sort of optimized, right?
Well, not the existing ones. He's working on a new object that is able to handle packedness and ruggedness at the same time. So it's better if he explains that in a future meeting.
Okay, yeah,
but
I guess it's more than just raggedness, though, right? Because it's also, it's that you'll have, if the whole thing is a big list of associations and one sort of column is a type string and one column is type integer, then
right.
Yeah.
So the types is a bit like what happens in quantity array. You have to put the types at the very bottom. It's the very bottom, the columns at the very bottom, or the keys at the very bottom that need to be tagged. And so it's this idea of deep threading that we have discussed other times that is used in quantity array.
Okay.
So, yeah, so the units go in pairs, for example. And so that means at the very bottom level of the quantity array, you worry about meters and seconds. So
right.
you just store meters and seconds.
I mean,
once.
obviously, the remaining thing is the missings business. But this is nice. I mean, this is kind of what we were discussing a couple of days ago, and already a partial implementation. This is great.
Yeah, I'm hoping to have something better for next week.
Sounds good. All right, we should wrap up here. I know we've got many things to discuss. Yeah, lots of things to discuss for the future, but not for right now. All right, anything else we need to cover for sure here? Nope. Okay. Thanks to everybody here. Thanks to folks on the live stream, and see you all soon.